on nuclear deterrence in the age of emerging technologies. I hope you enjoyed your meal and are ready for the next session. Now we begin session 2, Impact of Militarization of Artificial Intelligence. This session explores the profound impact of militarized AI on global security and strategic landscape. It will feature 4 distinguished national and international speakers who will share their insights on this important matter. After the presentations, we will transition into a discussion followed by the shield distribution ceremony and tea break. Ladies and gentlemen, this session will be chaired by Dr. Anam Riaz. I request Ma'am Anam Riaz to take her seat on the stage. Dr. Anam Riaz is Associate Director Research at CISS Islamabad. She has also served with the Arms Control and Disarmament Affairs of Pakistan at the Strategic Planning Division, where she acquired substantial experience in both policy formulation and research. Her academic journey encompasses teaching position at Bahauddin Zakaria University, Multan. She holds PhD in political science from Bahauddin Zakaria University. Dr. Anam's research focuses on strategic studies, international relations, nuclear politics, arms control, disarmament, and security issues. Dr. Anam, it's an honor to have you moderate this session. Without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ms. Anam Murad. Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, our worthy participants and guests. I am Dr. Anam Riaz, Associate Director Research, Center for International Strategic Studies, Islamabad. I welcome you all to this significant session on the impact of militarization of artificial intelligence. I have the privilege of moderating this significant session today. We have 4 eminent speakers. I would request Dr. Petr Topachakhanov, Dr. Jean-Marc Rickley, Ms. Alicia Salatini, and Dr. Zafar Khan to please join me on stage. I welcome you all. So we have gathered here to have a thought-provoking debate about how artificial intelligence has transformed and modernized the way states and societies are functioning and operating in the current times. While artificial intelligence has transformed every walk of life, including healthcare, education, communications, etc., its application in the military domain is a rapid growing reality. Nations across the globe are merging artificial intelligence in autonomous weapon systems, surveillance technologies, and several decision-making tools that are going to redefine the future of international security, wars, and conflicts. Artificial intelligence is one of the emerging and disruptive technologies that will affect different aspects of war in an unprecedented depth. For instance, the emergence of predictive maintenance software, intelligence decision-making assistance, autonomous underwater vehicles or drone clusters could have a new round of military reform and change the face of war. Moreover, AI is transforming the decision-making potential of states during crises in war. This shows how AI is revolutionizing decision-making during war or crisis. The tasks, surveillance, targeting, logistics are being delegated to machines. As a result, decision-making times are being compressed by AI. Ladies and gentlemen, our session includes presentations from our 4 eminent speakers. Each of our panelists brings a unique perspective to this complex issue. Please note that each participant will have 20 minutes to express their views. With that, I would like to introduce and invite our first speaker, Dr. Petr Topachakhanov. He will speak on artificial intelligence and the future of nuclear deterrence. Dr. Petr is the head of Sector for New Challenges in South and Southeast Asia at the Primakov National Research Institute of World Economy and International Relations of the Russian Academy of Sciences. He is also an assistant professor at Lomonosov Moscow State University's School of World Politics, where he has been serving as the director of the master's program on regional issues in world politics. Additionally, he holds the position of Associate Senior Researcher at the CIPRI Weapons of Mass Destruction Program. Previously, he has also served as a research fellow at the Carnegie Moscow Center's Non-Proliferation Program. He has earned his PhD from the Institute of Asian and African Studies at Michigan State University. Dr. Pether specializes in nuclear non-proliferation, disarmament, arms control, and the impact of new technologies on strategic stabilities with a prime focus on South Asia. Over to you, Dr. Pether.
Thank you so much for kind presentation, and it's my pleasure to be here to see many friends and colleagues from around the world. For me, it's a great opportunity not only to tell my story, and the title quite complicated for me, and you will see why, but also to learn from your questions, from your comments, and from other presentations as well. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Why it's so challenging to discuss this issue? We have so many publications prepared by a lot of institutions and think tanks, by CIPRI, by other institutions in Russia, in Europe, in the United States, in Pakistan, in India, in China, in other places, covering this deeply and with many analysis of the future, how it will be developed. In the same time, what I lack quite often in these publications, its connection, it's a bridge between the current situation, the future, and the past experience in this area. Because artificial intelligence, it's a term existed from 1960s. And from that period of time, our predecessors already covered many issues we want to discuss and want to explore again and again. That is why, for me, this bridge is quite an important thing to think about, because it can help us to deal with this challenge in the future. The second reason for me to say that title quite complicated, because it's about the future of nuclear deterrence. Again, there is a good literature in these areas, but also in this literature what we can see, first of all, a lot of questions without any answers about nuclear deterrence, connection between conventional and nuclear in this area, between emerging technologies and traditional technologies, between human and machines, and so on and so forth. Also, it's about a very dynamic political environment for these discussions, and lack of exchanges between Russia and the United States, between European countries, between China. There is a lot of mistrust in this area. And by the way, here I want to say again, thank you for inviting us, people from different countries, to have this conversation here in this room. So, building the bridge between today, tomorrow, and yesterday, I want to mention how the future war was predicted in the 1960s. Prediction was created by Soviet authors and commanders, and it consisted of several key points. The future war is to simultaneously defeat enemy forces, destroy their rare facilities, and disrupt their logistics. So it means that the future war connects all three areas: line of combat, territory inside the enemy's space, and also logistics, air logistics, sea logistics, and land logistics. It means, and we can see by example, even in current conflicts, for instance, even in the regional armed conflict between Russia and Ukraine, that, UAV target places deep inside Russian territory. And it's a challenge that Russia mentions every possible time, including in the context of strategic conversations with the West. Also, the future war, as it was predicted, it's about strike mobile groups acting very quick in different directions. It means that the future war, as it was predicted in the 1960s, should be very quick, especially in first stages. As it was mentioned in one of the analyses, that stockpiles of rockets and missiles prepared in the peacetime can be used in first few minutes and hours in the case of next huge war. Again, it's about a huge war. And after that, as it was seen that time, armed forces could operate even after this massive exchange of strikes, can operate with tasks to keep priority areas or to occupy or to have to target priority areas, including command and control facilities, economic facilities, and so on and so forth. So, what does it mean in terms of future wars, as it was predicted in the 1960s? Just an example, Marshal Vasily Sokolovsky in the center was one of key thinkers after the Second World War. And he highlighted the role of automation, especially in the area of air and missile defense. Further improvements of methods of conducting anti-missile and anti-aircraft defense based primarily on automated control of anti-craft missile systems. So it means that from the 1960s, we could see the rapid development of computer systems, especially for the area of strategic defense. And by the way, this task was exactly the reason why military establishments in Soviet Union and other countries invested a lot in computer technology, providing support for missile and air defense. Then, 1972, Soviet Union and Russia signed an ABM treaty. It helped to direct financial resources to other areas as well. But nevertheless, this beginning was very important, especially for understanding the role of automation in defense, not offense. Then we are moving closer to the current situation. And we can see, by example of Dr. Salik, I just want to quote him, the volume of information collected by all these sensors, it means surveillance, intelligence, and capabilities related to missile defense and early warning, is so huge that a timely analysis and conversion into a form of suitable to assist the commanders in decision making is only possible with the help of modern computers. So, after 1960s till today, we have the same main task for computers and AI, helping defense capabilities, helping to work with sensors, with early warning infrastructures. And also the difference between yesterday and today is that previously it was mostly about stable sensors and radars. Now we are thinking about mobile and quite changeable structures that can be deployed even without pilots on them, such as using anti-submarine capabilities deployed for the case of warfare in sea. So it means that it's more about different levels of early warning and surveillance and reconnaissance, existing and operating with the help of computers. So let me jump back, not to 1960s, but 1980s. These three other Soviet authors described exactly what we have right now in the area of AI used for military purposes. So it's about functions of reconnaissance and early warning, automated battlefield command and control systems, expert systems, and then we have human being keeping their own roles in the case of military operations. So for first line, everything is fine. It's operational, it's part of structures and infrastructures in the armed forces. As for the second, yes, and we can see by example of armed conflict between Russia and Ukraine, it's very rapidly developed, and we will see, based on this experience, more and more programs in this area. As for a human being, yes, situation forecast and decision making. But we have some questions here as well. Because if decision making is based on the screen and the information data received from AI generated data, then it may be some kind of point of vulnerability. Then operators may receive some wrong information, and it already happened when operators helped not to use this wrong data to start retaliation in the Soviet time. And expert systems, data interpretation and integration, generation of action alternative, decision making. It's not existing right now. It's something that can be developed, but not happened by today. Because of conservative of commanders and because of underdeveloped status of AI. Let me be back to some other Soviet book where it was described what actually artificial intelligence is. Artificial intelligence systems has no place for vague concepts and human methods. So this is a huge difference. All actions of the robot are subject to logic and strict algorithms. And two conditions. The first condition is requirement imposed on the robot's intelligence must be consistent with the capabilities of its sensing systems. So it means that all the actions that AI as a computer-based system can produce, it can be dependent only on programs, instructions that humans can supply and can provide for these computers. And also capabilities of AI-driven systems such as drones and so on, they can be limited by sensors, by technical system, technical capabilities of the system. And this is, it helps us to keep aside some fantasies we have about AI. So we, in the public debate, we have three types of AI being discussed widely. Only artificial narrow intelligence is relevant in the military domain. It enables computers to process large amount of data and identify patterns in specific tasks that are challenging for humans. Only that. Also, we have what is discussed, artificial superintelligence. It's like a fictional concepts. And artificial general intelligence describes a machine that can think and learn like a human. Even here, we have some works, some progresses, but it's still decades from having such systems, even in operating in civilian areas, not mentioning military domain. So human in the loop remains the key point of using AI for military purposes. The machine's output is always determined by the programmer's input. So it means of course, we have now discussions about that machines can write computer codes and so on and so forth. It's okay, it's fine. But for writing and creating games, it's fine. But for using in the military domain, when it's about targeting people, or especially in the context of nuclear deterrence, it's something that military people wouldn't accept in future several decades, I guess. So, in this context, military people would be more conservative to use AI-driven capabilities. Only scenario when they can accept this as a part of their operation, when the huge war is out and where they have to use everything they may have in their arsenals. So it's something like about a catastrophe, or something like about the situation that we can predict now, or we we cannot predict now, and we cannot predict for the near future. So, what time do I have? Just 10 minutes. Good. Thank you. So, if we try to bring this situation with AI to the area of military confrontation, so I can suggest you to think about that in terms of escalation ladder. So where and how military establishments could use AI-driven capabilities. So during the periods of disagreement and autonomous intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance systems would help decision makers evaluate adversarial actions. Also, a deployment of dual capable systems would be used as signaling tool to let other side know about risky or escalating situation. Well, it's fine, but when we have AI-driven intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance systems, analyzing large amount of data, we can understand that this data may be corrupt, and other side would try to, in the case if it wants to play ambiguity game, other side would try to provide or to poison data existing in the open space, to make other side act in the way that my side wants situation be developed. In hot warfare, autonomous intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance would support covert operations, while combat unmanned vehicles would be crucial for offensive actions. It's okay, it's clear. And during conventional warfare stages, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and offensive capabilities would remain consistent, but both sides would increasingly depend on nuclear early warning systems and strategic command and control. Well, again, here we have new developments when many countries have their own experiments in creating integrated command and control. So with blurring difference between strategic and non-strategic command and control, with blurring difference between early warning systems focusing on strategic and non-strategic conventional threats. And finally, during nuclear weapons usage, early warning systems, ballistic missile defense, nuclear command and control, autonomous components of the nuclear arsenal would be fully activated. If it's about a huge war, so it would mean that even autonomous command and control of nuclear arsenals can be an option for nuclear weapon states. It's a question of political decision. It's not a question about technical capabilities. Because during the Cold War, there were some experiments and concepts that you know very well about these ideas. So based on that, I want just to be back to the question, what the nuclear deterrence will look like in the future. And in this context, so the question is about AI. For me, the most troubling question is about, it depends on considering nuclear deterrence with or without conventional components. I have no answer to this question. Because for nuclear arms control, for the predictability in the area of nuclear deterrence, for building strategic stability between nuclear arms states, it's good to have a separate track focusing on nuclear deterrence without bringing conventional and emerging technologies and so forth. But this is a line highlighted in the last book by Michael Crepon. I agree with him by my heart, but the life is quite different, and we can see that many countries and many strategic thinkers insist that nuclear deterrence fully dependent on development in strategic area and new technologies. Second, in the nuclear domain, in the Cold War time, there was very clear understanding that even slight risks of escalations can bring nuclear war very quickly, very quickly. Now we have that this situation is quite different in the current environment, because now we have back discussions about tactical use of nuclear weapons or use of nuclear weapons in a regional conflict. We have some theories, we have some discussions. It means that here AI may be part of these situations, even if AI is about conventional systems, conventional reconnaissance surveillance. If countries would consider using tactical nuclear weapons or use battlefield nuclear weapons, it would mean it would be in the situation of huge environment with AI as a part of this. My final point is that now we have a situation of multiple nuclear armed states in being part of nuclear deterrence, the first. Then we have the combination of smaller arsenals and improving counterforce technologies. And this situation creates very unstable and unpredictable development of nuclear deterrence relations. It means that when organizers of this conference asked me to prepare my presentation on the future of nuclear deterrence and the role of AI, final answer from my side would be, I don't know. And especially now, with the lack of nuclear arms control, with very weak political connections between nuclear weapon states. And first, my wish, I would say, is that if we have the process reestablishing strategic dialogue between Russia and the United States, Russia and NATO states, China and the United States, between India and Pakistan, it would help us to focus on strategic capabilities, and then it will bring the good environment to address the emerging role of AI capabilities. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Peter, for giving us a very deep insight about the Russian thinking over the years and how artificial intelligence term was talked about inside Russia during 1960s. He gave a very good rundown about future of war and how AI is going to impact the understanding of nuclear deterrence inside Russia. What attracted me the most about his talk was that he talked in detail about how nuclear deterrence would prevail with or without conventional components. So this is the question which is very pertinent, and we need to really deliberate on that. Thank you so much. It was really informative. With that, I would like to introduce our second speaker, who is Ms. Alicia Salatini. She is going to share her thoughts on the topic impact of artificial intelligence on NC3, that is Nuclear Command, Control and Communications. Ms. Saratini is serving as a non-resident expert on artificial intelligence at the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies, CNS, United States of America. She is also working as an AI nuclear policy advisor at the Institute for Security and Technology, United States. Previously, she served as a policy fellow with the European Leadership Network, focusing on the AI nuclear intersection, and completed stints with the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization and CNS. She is also part of the Executive Committee for the Younger Generation Leaders Network, UK. She holds a master's degree in Russian studies and a postgraduate certificate in non-proliferation studies from the Middlebury Institute of International Studies. She has published extensively on military applications of artificial intelligence and has developed a general purpose risk assessment framework for analyzing artificial intelligence and nuclear risks. Over to you, Ms. Salatini.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you so much for having me here, first of all. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be here presenting today on this very critical topic. Okay, so a few quick points before I start. Well, first of all, my research and presentation today encompass the most advanced AI models available today, therefore going beyond the algorithms that are already integrated into nuclear decision-making components. Second, the scope of this discussion is naturally limited due to the relative opacity of nuclear command, control, and communications, so-called NC3 systems which underpin the nuclear decision-making process. So as a result, my presentation is not exhaustive, but rather an attempt to capture the most critical and the most salient applications within NC3. Third, although for this presentation I'm providing a generalization across all nuclear armed states, each of the states present really significant differences that very much merit an in-depth discussion and analysis, but fall outside of my presentation today. And finally, the AI nuclear conversation spans many areas, such as deterrence and broader implications for strategic stability, as we just have heard from Piotr. But my remarks focus specifically on NC3 and the nuclear decision-making component more broadly. Okay, so with that being said, before deep diving into this issue, I want to make 3 points up front. The first one is, while demonstrating incredible capabilities which are advancing by the day, AI is not a panacea and has fundamental problems related to the technology, ranging from issues with vulnerabilities, with reliability, vulnerabilities to cyber attacks, our inability to align these models to human goals and values, and to understand how an AI model makes its decision. And of course, given this limitation, any integration of AI in the nuclear domain must be approached with the highest degree of caution. But with that in mind, as we will see along this presentation, there are very, very clear indications that the integration of cutting-edge today's AI in nuclear systems is already underway, though we do not know with certainty which roles it will take and certainly to what extent. Second point is that the extent of AI capabilities and its limitations and implications are not fully understood. So as the technology develops, these capabilities are poised to change, potentially solving some of the current issues, but potentially generating a whole new bunch of risks, which we're just unable to predict at this point in time. And third point, when AI is intersected with the nuclear domain, although there are benefits that we can draw from a cautious integration and especially with an understanding of the nature of the technology, there is really a wide range of risks and implications which depend upon 3 main factors, which is the type of AI technologies considered for integration, the specific area where AI is going to be integrated, not only within NC3, but also within the multitude of systems and subsystems. Within the multitude of systems and subsystems that feed into NC3, or even outside of the nuclear domain altogether, but that still impact the nuclear decision-making. And finally, the level of human controls and oversight. And so therefore, because of all of these variables, the implications of AI in high-stakes military domain is incredibly nuanced and complex. And so as a result, what we need to do now is to better understand these implications with a view to establish thresholds for high-risk integrations in order to ensure that in the case of a system, systems are not compromised and the risk of miscalculations are not increased. So let's dive right into it. Now, today's advanced AI models, such as large foundation models and reasoning models, have demonstrated an incredible ability to generalize across diverse tasks and to continuously improve as they're fed with larger data set and more computational power, which has led to the development of absolutely tremendous capabilities. For example, we're witnessing incredible advancements with reasoning models such as OpenAI's O1, O3, and O4 families. And basically, these models are designed they're designed for complex reasoning by generating and providing an extended internal chain of thoughts before responding to a task, which is really groundbreaking application for scientific research and problem solving. At the same time, we're also experiencing exceptional development coming from China, and DeepSeek is a clear example of this, which is a Chinese AI startup that a few months ago released an open source model, R1, matching OpenAI's O1 in capabilities, but at a fraction of the cost, and despite US export controls on AI chips, which were specifically intended to curb China's AI development. Now, capabilities of these advanced AI models promise incredible benefits for society, but they also introduce potentially grave risks that stem from the nature of the technology and the way it is used. And so with rising geopolitical competition, AI is increasingly seen as a tool that can provide a significant strategic advantage in military contexts, and including in the nuclear domain. And in fact, it could have such a significant strategic advantage that from states' perspectives, they cannot afford to miss out on that one. Some of this actually came across, I think, very well during today's opening remarks. And so because of this potential for an advantage, nuclear armed states are seeking to integrate AI in functions that might directly or indirectly impact nuclear decision-making. And what I mean by that is that these considerations might range from direct integration into NC3 or in adjacent systems that ultimately feed into NC3 and thus indirectly affecting outcomes. Okay, so now NC3 architectures vary significantly across nuclear armed states. As they are meant to reflect each yeah. Maybe. I'll point to the other.
It's off.
Yeah.
It's off. Yes, it's off.
Okay. Sorry, let me start again. So now NC3 can you? Okay. NC3 architectures vary significantly across nuclear armed states, as they're meant to reflect each country's unique doctrine and nuclear posture. But broadly speaking, they encompass the infrastructure, protocols, and systems that empower national leadership to control nuclear forces. And rather being composed of isolated components, NC3 is a complex network of many interconnected systems and subsystems that work together to monitor, coordinate, and execute nuclear operations. Now, this is force management, situation monitoring, planning, decision-making, and force direction that together form a continuous cycle of data gathering, analysis, and command execution. So this interdependency means that AI applications are not confined to a single node, but rather they concurrently enhance multiple segments or multiple tasks within the NC3 architecture. So for example, AI-driven predictive analytics can model diverse threat scenarios, simultaneously supporting situation monitoring and adaptive planning, and at the same time providing decision support functions to streamline force directions and execution. And just as importantly, the third C of NC3 encompasses communication and underscores the need for information to be moved via various secure communication pathways so that even under adversarial interference or even direct attack, connectivity remains intact and reliable. And since most NC3 systems were built during the Cold War, they're now outdated and they do not match well today's evolving threat. And so modernization here in this context is more than necessary to improve both system safety and operational efficiency. And so AI integration is happening at the backdrop of an ongoing nuclear modernization, whereas the aging nuclear infrastructure creates an incentive to integrate AI by either keeping a technological edge or gain a strategic advantage, and certainly not to fall behind adversaries. And clearly the ongoing geopolitical competition that, during which we talked about very well during the opening remarks, obviously compounds this issue much further. The discussions of AI roles in nuclear systems, however, remain somewhat speculative because in the context of AI integration and its implication for nuclear decision making, we're still making some informed guesses. And that's very much the case because given the nature of NC3 for national security, a significant portion of the systems is still classified, and as a result, some speculation is inevitable, leaving often researchers to connect the dots where today's advanced AI might be integrated and examining defense contractors' briefings of subsystems that are currently ongoing modernization, and open source data to just hypothesize where and how it could be integrated. And on that note, I just want to flag that this is actually work that we're doing at the Institute for Security and Technology, where in fact we just wrapped up a workshop specifically dedicated on this issue, and we're going to be publishing soon the preparatory material and the project finding. So with this in mind, there are some assumptions that we can make based also on publicly available statements from high-level officials or military personnel and from technological developments. Well, for instance, as we've heard, President Biden and Xi Jinping have publicly committed to maintain human control over the use of nuclear decisions, which is a commitment that was shared by the UK and France as well. We've also heard from the head of the US Strategic Command, General Cotton, acknowledging that AI will have a role in modernizing NC3 systems by automating data collection and processing, and by speeding up data sharing with allies, and broadly speaking, by enhancing the decision-making capabilities. We've also heard from OpenAI announcing a new partnership with US national laboratories to deploy its reasoning models for scientific research across national labs, including in the nuclear weapons industry for researchers with security clearances. Finally, we've also heard Anthropic announcing their own collaboration with US national labs to evaluate frontier AI models, including Anthropic's hybrid reasoning model, which builds on an ongoing collaboration with the National Nuclear Security Administration and the Department of Energy's national labs. So more details on how OpenAI and Anthropic envision their latest models to play a role in the nuclear weapons industry are not given at this stage, although OpenAI mentioned AI safety research and work to, quote, reduce the risk of a nuclear war, end quote, and Anthropic mentioned research to understand how AI can contribute to addressing national security risks. And so given these statements and emerging developments, we can reasonably assume that today's integration of state-of-the-art, cutting-edge AI models into nuclear systems has already started. But where does AI have a role for nuclear decision-making? Well, broadly speaking, AI is seen as a tool that can help human decision makers making better informed and faster decisions. So to remark this as support for human decision makers, so with a human always in the loop. Now, AI is seen as particularly valuable for quicker threat detection and analysis of real-time data. And so specifically for this reason, we can easily see a role for AI in early warnings or in other intelligence platforms for analyzing data from space-based sensors or ground-based radars to verify a missile launch, for example, as well as to support decision-making functions by providing different courses of actions and forecast potential scenarios. Now, to give some specific examples, multiple sensors and information sources, including satellite imagery, radar, signals intelligence, and open source data, feed into centralized hubs where diverse data sets are consolidated. So AI here offers the prospect of informing, okay, thank you, okay. So AI here offers the prospects of performing multi-sensor fusion to fuse diverse data sets from many sensors much more quickly and efficiently to better discriminate real warheads from decoys, for example, for damage assessment, identifying changes in adversaries' behaviors, amongst other things. So, another example is AI for decision support, where decision support tools can incorporate contingency planning in simulation tools that allow commanders to view what-if scenarios. And modernization efforts right now are exploring AI to assist with suggesting courses of action under various scenarios for training and simulations for better preparing decision makers to be better prepared during a crisis and for generating new and operational plans and support adaptive planning. But even with AI being under the firm control of human decision makers, what does that mean in practice? And is that enough to avoid unintended nuclear escalation? Well, no, it's not. And the fundamental challenge for this is that we do not fully understand AI's implications when it comes to the nuclear domain and nuclear escalation in particular. And this is due to 4 key challenges. Well, first of all, AI can still influence nuclear decision-making even without direct integration into NC3, whereas functions outside of the traditional NC3 architecture can feed into decision-making, indirectly affecting outcomes. And this already complicates our assessment because we already do not have a clear pictures of NC3 and adjacent systems. Second, it's extremely difficult to predict how AI will advance. For example, today's advanced models had specific attributes that renders them unsuitable in high-stakes domains. For example, these systems are unreliable. They're prone to hallucinations, meaning anything from a chatbot making up facts about an historical event to a vision model seeing things that aren't there. They are opaque and black box, particularly for large and complex models. So chain of thoughts prompting of reasoning models in reality greatly improves transparency by eliciting intermediate reasoning steps. But empirical work shows that these chains sometimes fail to align with the model's final output. So obviously this leaves the core problem of black box still intact. AI is also vulnerable to cyber attacks and present alignment issues, meaning that we can't quite align these models to human goals and values. And in fact, new research recently released from Anthropic has demonstrated that some models have in fact shown alignment faking tendencies and even some deceptive behavior. Now, all of these limitations obviously persist even when a human is in the loop. But what I want to note is that these specific attributes that I just listed emerge not necessarily because the AI is doing something bad or something wrong per se, but because in essence they are a statistical approximation. And I want to underline this. So in case of large language models, they are a statistic description of languages based on their relationships between words. So this doesn't capture the nuances of the real world, of course, because the real world doesn't follow the same smooth probability distribution that this model learned from their training data. So what does this mean? This simply means that what these models are able to do, which is already quite astonishing, is simply not fit for some applications, and particularly those involving ISAGs. Now, it is, like as I said before, it is somewhat conceivable that these limitations might be resolved in the future, but we're just not there yet. And even assuming that we can solve these issues, new problems and risks could arise that we just can't predict at this point. Third, states may integrate AI into their nuclear enterprise in many different ways, influenced by their unique doctrines, capabilities, and even threat perceptions. For example, some may view AI in a way to compensate for perceived inferiorities or gaps in strategic capabilities, and thus offering an asymmetrical advantage. And finally, we still lack a clear understanding of what constitutes a safe integration in nuclear context. Obviously, there is no established consensus on what safety thresholds states are currently considering for AI integration, and how these thresholds might differ across nuclear armed states, particularly given the high stakes consequences that even a single error could trigger. Now, it is also actually conceivable to think that the states that perceive themselves as being at a strategic disadvantage may be more willing to accept more risk of integration if it offers strategic advantages such as faster decision-making and strategic parity. So obviously this is a really dangerous situation that we should seek to avoid at all costs. Last slide. So just to wrap up, so current model present many risks, and our ability to mitigate today these risks is inadequate. Now, there is a lot of ongoing research focused on addressing the technological challenges associated with AI, especially to ensure that they can operate reliably under adversarial conditions, or to make these models more explainable, but unfortunately, we're just not there yet. And as I said before, as the technology matures, it's possible that these challenges may be overcome, but it's also possible that new risks will emerge that we're just not able to predict at this point. And so at this point, there is way too many ifs and whens. And finally, there is a really huge landscape of implications and risks which depend upon three factors: the attributes of the models considered for integration, the area for integration, and the level of human control and redundancies. And so ultimately, the balance of all of these factors determines AI's impact on nuclear escalation and helps us pinpoint high-risk integrations, but we are still very, very far from understanding how these factors interact with each other. And so the most logical next step would be to identify high-risk integrations and to conduct risk assessment frameworks to quantify the risks to help us understand and classify high-risk integrations beyond the simple human-in-the-loop commitment and to inform the development of thresholds for integration. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Salatini, for providing us with such an insightful presentation, which primarily focused on the concept of NC3 and how it has been integrated in the artificial intelligence and what implications it can have in future. I think it is extremely important to talk about the risks and challenges that that include the unreliability, opacity, and the vulnerability of cyber attacks. That makes that really challenging for integrating artificial intelligence into the nuclear command and control system. With that, I would like to invite our third speaker, Dr. Jean-Marc Rickley. He will deliberate on the topic autonomy, machine learning, nuclear weapons, and strategic stability. Dr. Rickley is the head of global and emerging risks and the founder and director of the Polymath Initiative at the Geneva Center for Security Policy, Switzerland. He is the co-chair of the Partnership for Peace Consortium, Emerging Security Challenges Working Group. He's a co-curator of the International Security Map of the Strategic Intelligence Platform of the World Economic Forum. Dr. Rickley is a member of the Committees for Ethical Research at the University of Geneva and the European Research Council, as well as of the Advisory Board for Tech for Trust. He is member of the Advisory Board on Digitalization of the Chief of the Swiss Armed Forces. He also represents GCSP at the Governmental Group of Experts on Lethal Autonomous Weapons at the United Nations. Prior to these appointments, Dr. Rickley was an assistant professor at the Department of Defense Studies of King's College London and at the Institute of International and Civil Security at Khalifa University, Abu Dhabi. He has received his PhD in international relations from Oxford University. His latest published book is titled Surrogate Warfare, The Transformation of War in the 21st Century. With that, I would please request Dr. Rickley to inform the audience about his topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just have the clicker, please? Can you put the control is yours. Thank you. I just need the presentation on. No, they should put the presentation on. That will help. No. It's not yours. It's not mine. Well, I could start, but it's very visual. So I have about 30 slides to show you. So, you know, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So when you have a short time to speak, it's better to show pictures, and people are more attentive as well.
Especially after lunch.
Especially after lunch, correct? Yeah. Well, I have it on a USB stick if you want. There is only one file. So. Right, so I'll start my talk. So in 2019, I wrote a book chapter for a book from CIPRI on AI and nuclear strategy. And what I decided to do is actually to use this article and what I wrote and revisit it 6 years later. And right, so yeah, that's it. That's the one. And what is interesting here is that it's 6 years only. But when we talk about AI, 6 years is a long time. Why? Because as you'll see, things are developing very quickly. So the idea here is to talk about what is the impact of this technology on strategic stability, and the strategic stability refers to the absence of the incentive to use nuclear weapons first, but also the absence to build up those forces. And on top of that, you have to factor in assurance and reinsurance. So the issue of trust is also very important in nuclear strategy, and this is something that has not been talked too much in this conference, and AI will actually have a major impact on this. So if you look at development of computing power, you have two lines. The first line on the left represents the Moore's law. So tells you that every 2 years your computing power doubles, or it's even 18 months, which means that in 6 years, so the computer of 2019, so basically when I wrote this paper, the computer today is 8 times more powerful than in 2019. Now, if you look at the line on the right side, it's much steeper, and bear in mind it's a log graph. So a log graph means it's an exponential curve on a normal graph. And this is the same analysis, but for algorithm. And here, because the line is steeper, it means that the doubling period is actually shorter, 3 to 4 months. So now if you compare algorithm and you take the same time span, so 6 years, we're here talking about a factor of 350 to 500,000 times more powerful in 6 years. All right? So this is completely transformative. And then if you plot all the different algorithms that have been developed, you can see that even on the log graph, you have an exponential growth. So the first thing that we have to take into account when we talk about this issue is speed. And AI, one of the major impacts that is visible now is actually the ability to process a lot of information. And this is impacting everything that we are doing in terms of OOD loop, observation, orientation, decision, action, which is the basis, if you want, of targeting system in the military, but also in intelligence cycle. So the issue here in the nuclear domain is that when you are in nuclear crisis, the last thing that you want is to be pressed by time. All right? If you remember the Cuban Missile Crisis, Kennedy had a few days to actually ponder which decision to take. Now, you don't really want a decision maker to have 10 seconds or a minute to take a decision. So this is one of the impact. And we are already starting to see that AI is taking over. You know, here this is on the left side a former Top Gun instructor that was pitted against an algorithm in a dogfight, and basically this is what he felt. You know, basically what he is saying that it felt like the machine was able to preempt any of my moves. All right, and then the ARPA did another experiment, this time with a more realistic simulation, and again, the algorithm won over the adversary. And since then, what we've seen is that, starting with drones, AI-powered drones are beating those flown by human pilots, and then some experiment conducted where last year, for instance, an algorithm was able to achieve 8 different missions in a real jet. So increasingly, these algorithms are actually put into legacy weapons, and they are defeating human beings. Accuracy is a important topic because the stability of nuclear deterrence rests on the ability to secure second strike capability. And this is only possible when you have submarines, because it's impossible to track submarines. But increasingly, because of sensors and the ability to process data, it is becoming possible to pinpoint where these submarines are. And as you can see, the French are investing into that, the Americans, the Australian as well. And on top of that, what you also start to have are autonomous underwater vehicles. That could actually allow you to monitor what is going on undersea. But the even more difficult issue here is that it's not that you have to have these capabilities for this to be destabilizing. The simple perception that your adversary has this capacity is destabilizing, and we'll talk more about that later. Then the issue of system integration. And here, again, it's about the ability to integrate this system into legacy system. And this has the ability, again, to undermine your second strike capability. And again, the feeling of, because we don't have this system, there is some kind of technological gap, and we're losing the race. Legacy systems are also at risk of swarms of sensors and low-cost weapon platforms. And here, what is interesting, and we've seen that in Ukraine, we've seen that also in Gaza, is the asymmetry between the cost for the attacker and the cost for the defender. Increasingly, with low-cost weapon platform, you can actually create an asymmetry where it's very costly to defend. And basically what you do, you just exhaust your adversary. And so this is becoming a strategy that can diffuse very rapidly, because this technology diffuses very, very rapidly. Then there is a whole issue of hacking and data poisoning. This system, as was mentioned earlier, are probabilistic system that basically, if you take a picture like this, the algorithm will not perceive the picture as we perceive it, but it will vectorize every pixel, and then at the end you get a figure like 2.5. 2.5 is a sock, but maybe 2.7 is a dog. Now, if you're able to inject in the system a way to actually change the end classification, you end up with a different recognition. And it's impossible to see it with visual sight. So these systems are very developed, but they're also very, very brittle. And the issue here, for instance, this is an example where you put some stickers on traffic sign, and then the interpretation of the sign is changed. Increasingly, this issue that we're facing is that because of the rise of Gen AI, we are developing data that are synthetic, and then algorithms are being trained on synthetic data, and this leads to complete misrepresentation of the reality. And this is an issue that we are facing now, but that is growing by the day. As I mentioned, perceptions are very important because in nuclear deterrence, it's about making credible that you have the capacity. So if you perceive that your adversary has this capacity, and the issue here is that there is a lot of buzz in terms of what AI can do and which systems do you have, then this creates in itself uncertainty. Then the other issue, which is completely different, is cyber deterrence. You know, in nuclear deterrence, you communicate about your capabilities because you want to make credible what you have for your adversary. In the cyber domain, you do not communicate about your capabilities. Why? Because if you communicate about your capabilities, you're communicating about your vulnerabilities. So here, it's completely different. And the issue with cyber deterrence as well is that you can use the weapon once. If you have a zero-day vulnerability, you can use it, but once you use it, your adversary will patch the system, and it's over. So as you can see here, you have different dynamics in terms of communication about your capabilities in the nuclear domain and in the cyber domain that are conflicting. And then what we start to have are machine-induced perception. And these perceptions could be about how human beings are actually interpreting information. And as you'll see later, we are very easy to defeat. But then there is also the problem of machine-to-machine interaction. And increasingly, we are facing situation where machine communicate with machine directly, and that completely changes the way you have to think about crisis escalation. So, for humans, human algorithms are able to learn from our psychological biases, and once they learn about how we function, they can also basically then target information that will steer a decision in a specific way. By 2022, experiments were conducted where you show humans true pictures and a deepfake, and humans have more face into deepfakes. In 2023, an experiment was conducted by asking patients to rate the quality of medical advice received by doctors and received by chatbots, medical chatbots. And on the quality ratings, chatbots ranked higher. You could say, well, that's not really surprising because chatbots have access to all the information that is available. But then they also rated empathy. And on empathy, chatbot also rated higher than human beings. And what is empathy? Is the human capacity to actually relate to other human beings. So what this experiment shows is not that machines are more empathetic than human beings, but that machines are mimicking human empathy so that humans believe that they are more empathetic. So if this experiment and the results are actually confirmed, this opens the gates for massive manipulation by machines towards humans. This morning it was referred to weapons of mass distraction. I wrote this piece, the new WMDs, Weapons of Mass Disinformation. It's free online. You can have a look at the Geneva Policy Outlook. And the argument is that, yeah, we should definitely start to have a serious discussion about subversion through disinformation. But it doesn't stop here, because it's not just AI. Increasingly, we are actually combining AI and neurotech, where, for instance, you put humans into functional MRI, show them pictures, and an algorithm has to reconstitute what humans are seeing. And this is an experiment of last year. You can see that in an hour, the algorithm was able to actually reconstitute what the person sees. So basically, we are entering the era of mind reading. You might know about a company by Elon Musk called Neuralink. They had the first human successful trial last year. So basically, it's a chip that is implanted in the brain, and the person can communicate with the machine. So what we are seeing emerging is a sixth domain of warfare. It's about cognition. The brain is becoming a battlefield in itself. And cognitive warfare is more than just information warfare. Information warfare is sending a flow of information and you hope that the person will respond. Cognitive warfare is about controlling how and what people think in order to control how they act. And this is becoming increasingly possible because of AI and also immersive and evasive technology. So I don't want to spend too much time on AI and NC3 because it was done beautifully by Alice just before, but this is indeed a major problem because there is no accountability, there is no oversight about what is going on in this field. And as you can see, yes, we talk a lot about no one is foolish enough to call for integrating algorithm into weapons, so autonomous nuclear system. But when it comes to decision making, and there is this concept, I'm part of the GG on laws, and we've been talking for 10 years about whether we should have a ban on this or not. We talk about meaningful human control. If you have humans that have to take a decision, you take a Lavender, the algorithm that is being used by the Israeli. What Lavender does is identify human targets, right? And then the operator has a few seconds to decide, okay, I engage or not. This is a human decision, but all the decision-making filter has been done by the machine. So to what extent is the human decision? These are questions that we have to ask. Then the issue of proliferation. Here the problem is, again, because of misperception, there might be issue of, oh, well, we're falling behind, therefore we need to actually catch up. This is horizontal proliferation. But what we're starting to see is vertical proliferation from states to non-state actors. And these capacities are increasingly easy to get access to. And obviously this leads to the issue of swarms, and swarms have an impact, complete impact on nuclear strategy. Why? Because basically the idea is to saturate your enemy defense system. And what we've seen last year, you could see that Iran basically attacked, not with swarms, but the idea with the saturation strategy twice Israel. And so here you start to have different dynamics that are at play. Traceability, as I mentioned already, is an issue. The issue of how certain decisions are being taken, and sometimes this system completely fail. So if you take the only example in terms of machine-to-machine interaction and escalation that we have are trading. You might have heard about flash crashes. These are the only example where we can actually understand how machines interact. But if you start to apply escalation mechanisms that are being done by human with machine, you might fail because these are completely different. Then the issue of strategic culture, as was mentioned earlier, indeed, military are very conservative when it comes to using force, so they might not be the most proponents to use this technology, but other actors could, non-state actors, and increasingly, this was the topic of my last book, that basically we should consider technology as an actor in itself, as a surrogate in itself. And that completely changes the rules of the game. Why? Because basically machines are able to learn about our own functions. And when you see this algorithm, what you have to look at is not the Robocop or Terminator, is as which function this algorithm performed that is competing with my own function. And the more functions you cram into an algorithm, the more you will have a machine that compete with you. So to conclude, we've seen already three waves of AI. Predictive AI, this was 10 years ago. Gen AI, this is your deepfakes. But now what is emerging is agentic AI. Agentic AI is having an agent that is autonomous to understand a specific task, design a strategy, and perform that task. This will have enormous implication in the military and also in nuclear strategy, because here what we start to talk about are autonomous agents that are able to conduct their own task. And this will be completely destabilizing. The US is already investing into that, for instance, Thunder Forge Initiative, to train or to provide commander in the field with courses of action. All right? So, takeaways is that, well, in this field, you have to think really outside the box, and you have to think really quickly. It's not because something is not possible today that it will not be possible tomorrow. You just have to think in terms of weapon system, but increasingly you have to think about the surrounding environment, which is about perception, about cognitions. And so in order to offset some of the problems here, you have to train people with new skills, which are about foresight, thinking outside the box, and thinking about a possible future, resilience, and polymath. You need to have people to be able to read the weak signals. And in terms of industry, we really have to think in terms of responsible innovation, because if we do not put security first, we might one day have a very bad surprise. That's why some issues like kill switches should be thought about. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rickley. It was a very informed and very detailed presentation that comprised of a lot of technical terms. And the most interesting part for me was machines learning empathy. It's something which is very interesting and needs to be deliberated on. Then you talked about the sixth domain of warfare, that is shifting from psychological warfare towards the cognitive warfare, which is about controlling what and how people think, and how meaningful should be the human control when it comes to giving autonomy while integrating AI and using AI during the militarization. Then you also talked about the difference between cyber and nuclear domain. So in nuclear deterrence, communication is the key. You need to communicate that you have acquired the capability. But in cyber domain, if you communicate what all you possess, so you are exposed in front of your enemy. With that thought, I would like to introduce our last speaker of this session, Dr. Zafar Khan, who will shed light on artificial intelligence and impact on South Asian nuclear security. Dr. Zafar Khan is currently the Executive Director of Balochistan Think Tank Network, BTTN, at Balochistan University of Information Technology, Engineering and Management Sciences, also known as BUTIMS. He is also a professor at the Department of International Relations, BUTIMS, Koita. He holds a master's degree in international politics from University of Glasgow, UK, and PhD in strategic studies from University of Hull, Yorkshire, UK. He has also taught at the Department of Strategic Studies, National Defense University, Islamabad. He has authored multiple books and published widely in international journals on nuclear policy, deterrence, and South Asian security. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ambassador Naqvi and the CISS team, Dr. Bilal particularly, for looking after me and inviting me today to speak and share my ideas on the topic that is given to me. So I'd like to be as brief as I can, but I'll take 20 minutes or so, trying to make it more conceptualized and scholarly on the issue on the domain that this is interesting. That's right. So it will be within the embed of existing literature, and then I'll try to conceptualize, try to develop, embedding the same conceptual analysis, and relate it with the South Asian context. So I begin with given the return of the great power politics in the age of artificial intelligence, AI, the world falls further into strategic flux where each state struggles for its survival and territorial integrity. As this happens, the emerging technologies such as AI, quantum computing, integrating internet speed in the form of hypersonic glide vehicles, remote sensing, lethal autonomous weapons, systems, swarms of drones has been talked about, anti-drones, etc., are preconceived to be the game changer for winning battles and wars quickly and decisively. The evolving AI-led world is called the global third nuclear age. The South Asian region is being affected somewhat by the similar age emerging technologies. The question is how augmented technologies affect the policies of India, Pakistan, and what this means for broader South Asian strategic stability. The proponents of AI-led technology continue to presume that AI, yet another revolution in military affairs, appears to be imminent Amidst the growing body of literature on the emerging technologies, particularly on AI, many leading scholars appear to be concluding rather quickly and that AI integration in the land, air, and sea could transform the dynamics of warfare, endangering the survivability of retaliatory capability, transform the doctrinal force posturing, make the strategic rivals more offensive when it comes to offense and defense dilemma, create AI-led human commander, and make nuclear deterrence irrelevant. The proponents of AI argue that the lethal autonomous weapon system in the form of autonomous drone swarms would be able to launch, fly, target, and strike at will without having the humans in or on the loop. In doing so, many scholars presume that AI-related weapons, whilst revolutionizing the dynamics of war, fighting strategies, and would replace the traditional method of tactical and operational imperatives. Many argue that the traditional weapon systems such as artillery, tanks, aircraft, bombers, and including nuclear weapons could be undermined by AI-related weapons, autonomous weapons. Others equally argue that AI-related weapon system might affect nuclear strategies and related decision-making. For example, in the changing nature and character of warfare when it comes to AI-related technologies, Danish Garcia, one of the leading AI experts, radically argued that the development of AI and its uses for lethal purposes in war fundamentally change the nature of warfare. In the similar context, Kenneth Pine also argues that AI alters the nature of a war by introducing non-human decision-making. These scholars and still many others continue to argue that AI-related autonomous weapon systems such as AI-linked warbots, robotic system could make the potential adversary vulnerable and preemptive strikes. Such technologies could undermine the state's ability to hide in the battlefield and thereby could suffer from the incoming barrage of lethal autonomous weapon system. Many South Asian scholars on AI-led technologies also presume that such technologies may affect the South Asian rivals' military and nuclear strategies, thereby affecting the broader South Asian strategic stability. Nevertheless, the opponents of AI-related technologies are more skeptical about the dramatic impact of these technologies in terms of winning in the battles and war rather quickly and decisively. They question if such technologies could undermine the traditional method of warfare or war-fighting strategies bolstered with the tactical operational military tactics. They also criticize and caution the proponents of AI-related technologies if such technologies could potentially undermine the traditional war-fighting military weaponry. Many may argue if these technologies undermine the potential effects of nuclear deterrence while preventing nuclear rivals from waging bigger wars and ending up with mutually assured destruction. For example, the most recent article in Journal of Strategic Studies, Anthony King, argued that although autonomous weapons may become common, it is unclear whether such weapons will be remotely as revolutionary as many scholars routinely assume. Therefore, Robert's war will not take place, as he argues. Learning from the growing body of AI-related literature and embedding the conceptual analysis of AI in South Asia, this paper attempts to explore the applicability, adaptability, and the implication of such technologies on the broader strategic stability of South Asia. Offense and defense dilemma. This is one of the conceptualizations that I try to craft for this paper. The proponents of AI-led technologies would argue the defense will prevail upon the defense in the warlike situation between the rivals. In other words, the rival in possession of AI-related technologies would have an extra hedge under the defensive capabilities of the proponent. States having an advantage in AI technologies should be able to make the adversary retaliatory or defensive capabilities vulnerable to a possible preemptive strikes. States in possession of AI-led technologies vis-a-vis their rivals often opt for offensive strikes to win quickly and decisively. Whether or not this remains a delusion of AI-led technologies between the rivals, it becomes an evolving debate between the opponents and the proponents of such technologies. The US-Iraq episode, the Russian-Ukraine war, and the second Nagorno-Karabakh conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan can be some of the examples of the offense and defense dilemma. South Asia faces a similar offense and defense dilemma. India's aspiration, for example, for AI-led technologies, including a number of other technologies, against its rival Pakistan, tempts India for offensive strikes. Unlike the other episode where the offensive is operated between the two conventional powers or between the nuclear and a conventional power, nevertheless, it is difficult to ascertain how India's delusional offensive against a nuclear Pakistan may materialize in South Asian context or nuclear dyad, given this risk of escalation to a major military conflict spiraling out of control for unintended consequences. It is imperative to note that AI-led technologies for offensive act may operate between nuclear power against a weak conventional power, or the offensive may prevail by a strong conventional power against a small or exhausted conventional power, but it is not clear how the use of AI-led technologies is applicable between the two nuclear dyads or between the two equal nuclear powers. When it comes to transforming the dynamics of warfare, the proponents of AI-led technologies conceptually presume that such technologies may change the dynamics of warfare. This is the old method of warfare tactics, both at the tactical or operational level, that could be replaced eventually with the machine replacing the traditional methods and material of warfare between the rivals. Conceptually, it is to ascertain if the presumed AI Major General could make the warfare more nasty, brutish, and short. That being noted, the proponents of AI-led technologies, such as autonomous drone, swarm drones or drone swarms, bring the US-Iraq, the Russian-Ukraine, then second Nagorno-Karabakh conflict into their consideration, where AI-related technologies were used for quick and decisive victory as conceived. The question more hypothetically is whether these episodes driven by AI-led technologies change the actual dynamics of warfare. The existing body of literature indicates that although AI-augmented technologies play an important role in these episodes, the decisive role was played by human commander, the well-composed troopers, tanks, and artillery in the battlefield. Considering the empirical evidence from the conceptual essential of AI technology, it is to ascertain if India's acquisition of AI-led technologies could transform the dynamics of warfare in South Asia. India, with its conventional superiority, and had already failed military attempts for preemptive strikes against Pakistan during the so-called Balakot incident in 2019. It is not clear if India, with AI-augmented technologies, could be successful in the future. Since there is a counter technologies for every technology, Pakistan effective countermeasures could make India's decision-making for quick and decisive victory hard and complex. Contrary to the proponents of AI-led technologies that presume the dynamics of warfare both operationally and tactically as simple as the chess gaming, the classic Clausewitzian, I'm referring to Clausewitz, universe underpins the traditional actualization of a warfare. Clausewitz argued that everything is very simple in war, but the simplest thing is the most difficult. When it comes to conceptually, it may be presumed that those who acquire AI-related technologies may modify their doctrinal force posturing against their potential rivalry. They may act offensively while shunning the defensive mechanism for quick and decisive victories in their conflict with adversaries. One may trace empirical evidence from the ruthless strategic competition between the potential rivals both in the past and in the contemporary world. Depending on the strategic environment, the acquisition and/or procurement of such technologies gradually is affecting India's doctrinal force posture in South Asia. For example, many serious Indian security analysts, where most of them serve the Indian security leadership, argue that India should rescind its no first use nuclear option. For example, Schwarzenegger Memon argues that circumstances are conceivable in which India might find it useful to strike first. Therefore, India is India in possession of AI-led technologies would likely to act offensively to achieve its military and political objectives. Such transformation in India's doctrinal force posturing driven by AI-led or perceived AI-led technologies would, number one, boost up its confidence to act offensively, number two, tempt India for a preemptive strike for decisive victories, three, retain India's dominance in the regional hemisphere. Nevertheless, the temptation for acting upon offensively against India's potential rival, that is Pakistan and China, could create an acute security dilemma. This, in turn, will further push the rivals for arms race, crisis instability, and the risk of escalation, leading to unthinkable, particularly when the rivals are in possession of credible nuclear forces. I'd like to now go on to the human replacing the human commander. This is again perceived in the existing literature when it comes to the ambitious rationale for replacing the human commander. It is not clear whether the South Asian evolving complex security environment could primarily have the AI-led machine replacing the human commander in the battlefield. Also, it is not clear, however, consequences that could have between the nuclear rivals in South Asia. We don't have any strong evidence that the leading technological powers will have the machine replacing the human commander or on the battlefield. Security analysts largely preconceive that the world may have a machine commander. The proponents of AI-led technologies argue that lethal autonomous weapons and swarms of drones without the human commander could revolutionize warfare for decisive and quick victories. They consider that the AI-led system can be quick in decision-making compared to human for decision and quick result in the battlefield. Those who've thought in the past that they would have a quick results in their war have failed to do so, and we have a lot of empirical evidence in the history. In this context, a leading scholar in AI, James Johnson in the UK, argues that the militaries that use AI such as remote sensing, situational awareness, battlefield maneuver, and a compressed decision-making loop will doubtless gain significant advantage on the battlefield compared to those who depend on the human judgment alone. The Clausewitsian world that is based upon the essential of empathy, as discussed today, correct decision, restraint, and judgment warn that in the real world composed by humans and chaos cannot simply be left to a sort of algebra of action. This can be reflected that if all variables and outcomes could be known, and if war was purely irrational affairs, there would be no need of physical existence of armies, but only of the theoretical relation between them. The perceived narrow AI may play some role in decision making, but there is a little evidence that AI technologies without the human commander, particularly in the military domain, could have done enough to distinguish between the different dynamics and posturing of warfare activities. For example, Hunter and Bowen in their seminal work argue the narrow AI can play a game like chess and go effectively or fly a simulated aircraft. Does not mean that the narrow AI can be relied upon to perform command duties in war. There is an illusion of preemptive strikes. The conceptual analysis regarding the illusion of a preemptive strike reflect that countries such as India may have modernized conventional and nuclear forces are likely to get tempted for preemptive strikes against their potential rivals. India has tried in the recent past and might get tempted for more aggressive behavior in the future in South Asia as well, as it integrates presumably AI-led technologies both in the conventional and nuclear domain. AI has long been considering, while bringing dramatic shifts in the doctrinal posturing against the rivals, more especially against Pakistan. This is India's aspiration for counterforce temptation for preemptive strikes, which remains inconsistent to India's broader nuclear policy it initially conceived. Nevertheless, countries in possession of AI-augmented technologies I have 5 minutes, which I counted, but anyway, with the additional incentive to strike first or offensively their rivals, many presume that such could have unintended consequences, thereby the risk of escalation between the rivals. For example, James Johnson argues that the AI-augmented advanced capabilities could have the same implication which was perceived. When it comes to survivability of retaliatory capability, this is one of them that AI could have implication on the capabilities, and writer like Preston Lieber and many others, already considered that the two pillars of concealment and hardening could be undermined by the AI-led technologies. They just presume, but there are counter technologies where you can still hide, you can still disperse timely and effectively as countries develop their retaliatory capabilities. When it comes to nuclear relevance, many AI scholars in the existing literature thinks, that AI technologies may make nuclear weapons or nuclear deterrence irrelevant. So this is connected with the issue of survivability of the retaliatory capabilities. Many may argue that emerging technologies, including AI technologies, may eventually make nuclear deterrence some sort of irrelevant, or meaningless. They argue that the rivals may not successfully hide their deterrent capability, for example, from technologies, even the nuclear-powered, submarines, second strike capability. Many leading writers often quoted, with their often quoted articles, also come up with the same conclusion that the nuclear-powered submarine may not be hidden by the rise of these technologies. However, vulnerable rivals could adopt strategies, as I mentioned, by producing effective countermeasures against AI-augmented technologies. With effective counter-AI-led technologies, nuclear rivals may continue to keep nuclear weapons and their related delivery system. The second strike capability is perceived to be more vulnerable in the new era of counter-force targeting, but with the counter technologies, they can make it secure. As the technology, there is for every technology, there is a sort of a counter technology. Right. So you got still 3 minutes, but anyway, let me try to conclude with these three major conclusions that I'd like to have, then more we can have Q&A. To conclude with a cautious assessment that one, it is unlikely that AI-related autonomous system could almost have limitless capacity to find, strike, and destroy targets. Two, the significance of other military systems, including the human military commanders, could not altogether be sidelined or undermined. The human in the loop, this reflects or gives that direction. Three, AI-related weapons system or weapons would favor the defense rather than defense. It is not clear if the similar imperative that many scholars conceptually depict can be appealing and applicable in South Asian context as well. Other leading scholars also question the lethality and predominance, of AI-related or AI-augmented technologies by undermining more traditional and classic war-fighting strategies. They clearly argue from the kitsch of classic war-fighting strategies, so from the kitsch of vision of the war, that we will not have a model of AI major general, therefore dismissing the over-ambitious possibility of AI replacing human commanders. So I'd like to end here, and we'd like to have more comments on this in the Q&A session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zafar Khan. I would not take the time from the question and answer session. You have rightly said that AI-related weapons will favor the state which is developing defensive capabilities rather than offensive capabilities. Before we officially start the interactive question and answer session, I would like to mention some rules for saving time and increasing clarity. I would urge you all to please keep your questions very short and to the point. Please introduce yourself by mentioning your name, your designation, and your institutional affiliation. Please indicate the speaker you're posing the question to. Avoid giving comments. Rather focus on asking questions. Each person should ask only one question to accommodate maximum participation. With that, I declare that the House is open for questions. What we can do is we can club 2 and 3 questions and then ask our esteemed panelists to respond. So.
Thank you. My question is to Dr. Rickley and anyone else in the panel who could answer this, perhaps Ms. Saltini. Even if integration of AI into nuclear decision-making remains technically premature, some states may still find this half-cooked meal appealing for their perceived strategic edge. how can states avoid a classic business dilemma where mutual restraint on AI-enabled nuclear command, control, and communication is desirable for strategic stability, yet mistrust and unilateral incentives can push for adoption? So what measures or mechanisms do you think could realistically anchor mutual trust and preserve meaningful human control in an age of compressed timelines and autonomous escalation risk, as both of you said? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Riaz. My question is for Dr. Rickley. I'm Aiz Azam. I'm a faculty member at the A University in Islamabad. This pertains to a very fascinating comment about how machines are now able to empathize, or at least they're able to mimic empathy when they're interacting with humans. And I think this relates to a comment which was made on the panel earlier this morning about how it might be possible about how it might be possible for human beings and their over-reliance on machines the more that we interact with them. So given that comment and given the comment that you just made, I just started to wonder, do you think that in the future we might potentially find ourselves in a situation where in the middle of a nuclear crisis, if artificial intelligence or machines are able to mimic empathy when they're giving us options for a decision on whether or not we should go ahead with a strike? Do you think leadership might possibly find themselves in a position where they believe that the decisions they are being offered or the options they're being offered by the machine effectively takes into consideration all nuances, which include empathy, which include human destruction and everything else, and what that might mean for the decision that a leader might actually take? Thanks.
And Dr. Rubina.
Thank you so much, Dr. Riaz. I would try to be quick. Myself, Dr. Rubina from National University of Sciences and Technology. My question would be from Dr. Peter and Alish, I would say. The point I just want to highlight is to be that in absence of that international framework that deals with AI, related technology, and obviously that still is missing in this context. Obviously the states having that technology are considered to be having more freedom in this context. So my question would be that is there any setting that was applied in nuclear non-proliferation setup, like we are waiting for P5 to establish that framework, and still after that obviously they will be exempted and the rest will have to face the penalties and things like that. So, and in the absence of the regional framework, where Pakistan is suffering more as compared to India, because India is comparatively in a better position in emerging technologies. So thank you so much.
I think we should respond. Dr. Rickley, I would like you to go first.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question that are tough to crack, because this is something that is in the making. On the first one, NC3 and the role of AI in nuclear. I've been working on AI for the last 10 years at least, and up until last year, I'd say, talking about AI in the nuclear domain was almost a non-topic. Yeah, there had been an article, I think, on Wonder Rocks by American colonels calling for the U.S. needs a dead hand, or a system that automatizes, retaliation. And that was received by a lot of criticism because it was completely foolish. The last year, I attended the second edition of the REAIM conference in South Korea, in Seoul, the responsible use of AI in the military. And I was really struck by the number of people talking about the integration of AI in NC3 system. And this is there. It's no longer sci-fi. We are actually, we are in this. So your questions about trust, about what information means in the future, is becoming more and more crucial. And this also linked to your question. I think we have to go beyond the nuclear domain. But I'd say we are in a perfect storm right now, because there are two things. We have the technological capacities to create information that are perceived as being highly credible by human beings. At the same time, we are going through probably a major epistemic crisis. Up until now, the last 300 years, we're living in the era of enlightenment. The idea that progress and knowledge is based on science and facts, and therefore it is thanks to scientists, journalists, that we are able to move forward, because we need information that has been proved valid. So what we are seeing the last, say, 20 years, but especially in the last 10 years, is a growing questioning of what information means. And increasingly facts are replaced by opinions. So what we are in this crisis where the criteria we use to define what is true, what is wrong, is being eroded. At the same time, we have the capacities, each of us, to generate wrong information. So this leads to enormous issues in terms of truth. What is true? And when we're talking now about information in the nuclear domain, obviously this has tremendous consequences. So to maintain trust, yes, we could say that you have to establish levels of communications. You need to have interpersonal relationships. That's why this will be very, very important in the future. But increasingly, and probably here we are the generation that is the pivot. Probably in 1,000 years, archaeologists will look at us as being an odd generation, because we grew up in the analogic world and we are living in a digital world. But now imagine when the new generation that is using these things, increasingly they will also use metaverses, because the ecosystem of metaverses are very similar to gaming. So for them to transition to invasive, immersive technology will be completely natural. Think about the impact it will have on how these people will relate to other human beings and the notion of truth. All right? So in the future, we'll end up probably, if you've seen the movie Matrix, depending where you look at, you might look at a very different environment. And it might not even be conscious, because this machine will be able to understand how you work. And if now you combine, for instance, Google, not the Google Glasses, Apple Vision Pro that has eye trackers with earbuds that can now start monitoring your brain activity. You start to have unique data which are about a person looking at something and its emotional response. When you start to have this data, you understand, you can basically profile how a person will react to any external stimuli. So we teach people critical thinking in order to diffuse the risk of disinformation manipulation. But with this technology, because they are so immersive, so invasive, they are able to actually provide you information that will lead you to the outcome that they want. So my fear is that we are ahead in terms of massive manipulation. And that's why 2 years ago I wrote a paper called "We Should Come Up," similar to what we came up during the 60s and 70s with arms control agreement, with subversion control agreement. Because this is something that will blow up in your face in the near future. Sorry, I don't have any really positive solution to fix that problem.
Dr. Rickley, would you want to comment about what measures should be inculcated in order to increase trust among the states?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, interpersonal relations are very important. I think we should also come up with some kind of governance on how we develop these technologies. But if you look at the current geopolitical setting, if you look at global warming, I mean, over the last 30 years, since the end of the Cold until now, we had the best case scenario for multilateralism, for cooperation, and see global warming where we are heading. I mean, nothing worked. Now, in terms of these issues that are completely strategic for countries and great powers, at a time where we would need some agreement on, okay, we need to put some thresholds and limitations about what we can develop, there's absolutely the opposite, because it provides so much a strategic advantage that if we cannot regulate that space, anything will be used. And in terms of ethics, also, if you look, what was the first measure that the Trump administration took, is to basically remove the ethical guideline on and safety guidelines on AI in order to have a technological advantage. If that is the way we're going in the future, we're just talking here about competition among US companies. Now, if you take US and China, the race is on. And so, at one point, we will have to come up with an agreement on what we can do and what we cannot do. I don't think I will be able to do that. Therefore, we will continue to develop this technology. And the issue is that the pace of this transformation far outpaced the possibility for countries to govern this technology. And also you need to really think outside the box, which is not basically what governments are really good at. And so, sorry to say, I'm not very optimistic about where we're heading.
Ms. Alisha?
Yeah, I do share a little bit like the non-optimism side of things. But there are a few things that I would like to add, especially in that question. Well, obviously, dialogue, confidence-building measures are absolutely necessary on something like that. Right now, there is a lot of focus, for example, like a lot of people that actually discuss about the integration of AI in NC3. Right now, most of the conversation is focused on finding common ground or dialogue across the P5 states. But obviously, this is not a problem that is solely it's only on P5 states. Of course, we need to have actually, like, we need to integrate all nuclear armed states. It is essential in this discussion. Along with dialogue, what I suggested during my presentation is something that could be done by each of the nuclear armed states at the unilateral level. So having this type of risk assessment frameworks to understand how potential AI failures might lead to escalation. This is something that can be done at the unilateral level, perhaps even at the classified level as well, because you would have to look into very deeply into your NC3 systems. What are the critical nodes? Where are the points that AI that can fail? And based on that, use that to inform your discussions and dialogue with other countries. And so, for instance, like I also wrote recently an article for War on the Rocks where I actually was making the case that instead of just committing to like a simplistic, like a prescriptive thing of just like maintaining human in the loop, which is not enough, obviously, to restrict or to avoid unintended escalation. Instead, what countries could do could declare that any AI integration in the nuclear domain, or even outside of the nuclear domain, as I said before, should not lead to inadvertent escalation. And on that basis, work to reduce risks. And unilateral measures could also be that. This is, like, I think, something that would make the most sense, in my opinion, and the most logical way forward. I hope this responded a little bit to your question as well, because I tried to integrate, but I absolutely agree with you on the on the need to have like multilateral discussions, like inclusive of, yes, absolutely. I hope I responded to that too.
Dr. Petter, there was this question about the absence of international framework for the use of AI and creation of a regional framework. Would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you so much for this question. I just want to put this question in the frame of our session about the future of nuclear deterrence. The question is, what we want to control, and what is the aim of having such conversations. If it's about addressing our worries about robots, about futuristic stuff we just discussed, it's fine, but it's not necessarily a very urgent task. The urgent task we live with right now is just dealing with the increased nuclear risk, the risk of nuclear war, and how AI can contribute to this risk. So that is why, for me, the most appropriate way is to deal through the traditional nuclear arms control. Then the people would say, well, nuclear arms control is dead. I'm not agree with them at all, because it's not nuclear arms control is not just nuclear arms control treaties. It's not just about some agreements and limitations dealing with nuclear stuff. It's about consultations, it's about negotiations, it's about national technical means, it's about transparency measures, trust building measures, and so on and so forth. It's about a huge set of activities related to nuclear weapons. And here we have channels to deal with our concerns related to AI and AI contribution to nuclear risks. Because during the US-Russian consultations, during the consultations in P5 on nuclear doctrines, already we discussed these issues. So that is why I believe that we need to focus on that frames and to develop this conversation into bigger tracks and conversations. Thank you.
Dr. Zafar Khan?
Just since it was not my talk, but this regulation and trust building, this is important, as Rubina has mentioned about the nuclear weapons. So initially it took many years, before they reached to a discussion, and agreed upon discussion where they had NPT eventually. Probably in the AI regulation and formal sort of regulation, which is today absent, could take number of years, unless the major powers, the leading or developing countries, or the developed countries, acquire these sort of capabilities and develop before they sit on the table and discuss the regulation and the ethical mechanism of such technologies. So it would take time, right? As it took time, for. So we have the empirical evidence when it comes to the nuclear weapons and their related delivery systems. So perhaps, for this it would take time as well.
I've been told that we are running out of time. So before concluding this session, I wanted to thank all my speakers. They have provided us with some really interesting deliberations and presentations. Before we conclude, I would like to highlight that Pakistan has been a supporter of the regulation of militarization of artificial intelligence. Pakistan has been advocating for a complete ban on autonomous weapon systems, but India has been integrating artificial intelligence into their military domain, which can be challenging for Pakistan's future. With that, I would announce the session to be concluded. Thank you so much, everyone, for your patience. Thank you.
Well-steered discussion indeed. Thank you, Dr. Anam. Ladies and gentlemen, let's now commence the shield distribution ceremony as a gesture of appreciation for our distinguished guests. May I now welcome Ambassador Ali Sarwar Naqvi, Executive Director of Center of International Strategic Studies, Islamabad, to confer the tokens of appreciation to our speakers. To begin, I call upon speakers one by one. The first recipient is Dr. Petr Topechaknov. Dr. Petr is the head of Sector for New Challenges in South and Southeast Asia at the Primakov National Research Institute of World Economy and International Relations of the Russian Academy of Sciences. Dr. Petr. They asked me to reintroduce. Miss Alicia. Next, Miss Alicia Saltini. She's a non-resident expert on AI at the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies and an AI nuclear policy advisor at the Institute for Security and Technology. Miss Alicia. Next, Dr. Jon Mark Rikli. He's the head of Global and Emerging Risk at the founder and director of Polymath Initiative at Geneva Center for Security Policy in Geneva. Dr. Zafar Khan. He's currently the Executive Director of Balochistan Think Tank Network at BUTEMS. Dr. Zafar. And finally, our moderator, Dr. Anam Riaz. She is Associate Director Research at CISS Islamabad. Dear attendees, after such an engaging session, we will now pause for a short tea break. Kindly return by 20 minutes to ensure we stay aligned with our agenda and maintain the momentum of the event. Thank you.